In 1911, a man walked into the Louvre, the most famous museum on Earth, lifted a painting off the wall, tucked it under his arm, and walked out the front door. Nobody stopped him. Nobody even noticed. He took it home, slid it into a trunk, pushed the trunk under his bed, and for 2 years and 4 months, the most wanted artwork on the planet sat in a one-room apartment in Paris, while the whole world searched for it. Here's the part that makes it worse. He didn't break in. He didn't hack a lock. He helped build the case that was supposed to protect it. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. Monday, August 21st, 1911. The Louvre is closed. It closes every Monday, has for years. But the building isn't empty. Maintenance crews come in on closure days. Painters, cleaners, glaziers. They wear white smocks. They carry tools. The guards know their faces. That morning, a French artist named Louis Beru arrives early on Tuesday, the 22nd. He's come to sketch in the Salon Carré, one of the grand galleries. He sets up his easel across from the spot where the Mona Lisa hangs. Except it doesn't hang there anymore. 4 iron pegs jut from the wall. Nothing else. The painting is gone. Beru assumes a photographer has taken it to another room for a shoot. He waits. He asks a guard. The guard checks. Nobody has it. The guard checks again. The photography studio hasn't seen it. The head of security is summoned. More checking, more nothing. By noon, the Louvre is in lockdown. By evening, every exit is sealed. 60 detectives swarm the building. They search 235 rooms. They find nothing except a glass and wood protective case abandoned on a service stairway. It had been pried off the painting and left behind. The Paris police have a problem. Actually, they have several. First, they don't find the theft until Tuesday. The painting vanished Monday. That's a full-day head start for whoever took it. Second, the Louvre has no inventory system, not a real one. It takes a week just to confirm which paintings are missing. Third, and this is the one that matters, they have no idea how someone carried a painting out of the largest museum in the world. So they do what investigators do when they're lost. They chase famous names. Pablo Picasso, yes, that Picasso, gets hauled in for questioning. Why? Because his friend, the poet Guillaume Apollinaire, had once employed a secretary who stole small statues from the Louvre. Apollinaire is arrested, thrown in jail, interrogated for days. He's terrified. He names Picasso. Picasso reportedly weeps in the courtroom and denies everything. Both are released. Neither had anything to do with it. The investigation drags on. Detectives interview thousands of people. They follow tips from psychics. They search the Seine. Newspapers across the world run the story daily. Rewards are posted. The empty wall in the Salon Carré becomes a tourist attraction. People line up just to stare at the spot where the painting used to be. And the whole time, the answer is so simple it's almost insulting. But we'll get to how the painting actually left the building in a moment. Because the method, when you hear it, is going to change how you think about security forever. His name was Vincenzo Peruggia, Italian, 30 years old. A glazier, someone who cuts and installs glass. He'd been living in Paris for a few years, picking up odd jobs. One of those jobs, in 1910, was at the Louvre. The museum had hired a contractor to install protective glass cases over several valuable paintings. Peruggia was one of the workers. He helped build the cases. He helped mount them. He knew exactly how they attached. The screws, the fittings, the weight. He also knew the layout, the service corridors, the stairwells, the doors that locked, and the ones that didn't. On Monday, August 21st, closure day, Peruggia walked into the Louvre wearing a white worker's smock. The same kind every maintenance worker wore. He looked like he belonged because until recently he did. He went to the Salon Carré. The room was empty. He lifted the Mona Lisa off its 4 iron pegs. The painting is small, just 30 inches by 21 inches. About the size of a large cutting board. It's painted on a poplar wood panel, not canvas. It weighs about 18 pounds. He carried it into a service stairway, alone. He set it down and removed the protective glass case. The same case he'd helped install. He knew every screw. It took minutes. He wrapped the bare painting in his white smock, tucked it under his arm, walked down the stairs to a service exit. The door was locked. This was the one moment the whole plan could have collapsed. He jiggled the handle. It wouldn't budge. He stood there, a man holding the Mona Lisa in a stairwell, with no way out. Then a plumber walked by, a Louvre plumber doing his Monday rounds. The plumber had a key. He saw a worker stuck at a jammed door, something that apparently happened all the time. He unlocked it, held it open. Peruggia nodded, walked through and stepped out onto the streets of Paris. The whole thing took about 20 minutes. Think about what just happened. No disguise, he wore his actual work clothes. No forgery, no distraction, no accomplice beyond an unwitting plumber. He didn't defeat the security system, he was the security system. He'd been inside it. He knew its rhythms, its blind spots, its assumptions. The Louvre's security in 1911 relied on one core belief: the people who work here are trustworthy. The guards recognized workers in white smocks. The doors had locks, but colleagues opened them for each other. The protective cases were strong, but the man who built them knew exactly how to take them apart. Peruggia had even been fingerprinted by French police before, after a minor arrest. His prints were on file. Detectives actually found a thumbprint on the abandoned glass case in the stairwell. But the Paris police filed fingerprints by criminal history, not by individual print. They would have had to already suspect Peruggia to match it. They never did. He walked home to his apartment on the Rue de l'Hôpital Saint-Louis. A small, rented room. He placed the Mona Lisa, still wrapped, into a wooden trunk with a false bottom. He slid the trunk under his bed. And that's where it stayed. For 28 months. 28 months while the world went mad trying to find it. Think about the daily reality of this. Vincenzo Peruggia went to work, came home, cooked dinner in his small apartment, slept in his bed, directly above the most hunted object on the planet. The newspapers kept running stories, rewards climbed. At one point, detectives actually searched Peruggia's building. They questioned him. He showed them his Louvre employment records to prove he'd worked there, apparently not realizing this made him more suspicious, not less. But the investigators were overwhelmed. They'd interviewed thousands. They moved on. Meanwhile, the empty wall at the Louvre drew bigger crowds than the painting ever had. The French public was furious. The museum director was fired. Security was overhauled. The Mona Lisa's absence became the biggest art story in the world. Peruggia waited. According to his later statements, he believed he was doing something noble. He was Italian. Leonardo da Vinci was Italian. The painting, he argued, had been stolen from Italy by Napoleon. It belonged in Florence, not Paris. He wanted to return it to its homeland. This wasn't quite right historically. The painting had actually been brought to France by Leonardo himself, or possibly sold by his assistant after Leonardo's death in 1519. Napoleon had nothing to do with it. But Peruggia either didn't know this or didn't care. In December 1913, more than 2 years after the theft, he finally made his move. He contacted an art dealer in Florence named Alfredo Gheri, who had placed a newspaper ad seeking Italian artworks. Peruggia wrote to him offering a painting he said had been stolen from Italy and deserved to come home. Gheri was skeptical but intrigued. He invited Peruggia to bring the painting to Florence. Peruggia packed the Mona Lisa into the same trunk, boarded a train from Paris, and checked into a hotel, the Albergo Tripoli Italia, under his real name. When he opened the trunk and revealed the painting, Gheri examined it carefully. He saw the Louvre's inventory stamps on the back. He asked Peruggia to leave the painting overnight so he could verify it with the director of the Uffizi Gallery. Peruggia agreed. He went back to his hotel room and waited. The next morning, Italian police knocked on his door. He seemed genuinely surprised. In his mind, he was a patriot, returning a masterpiece to its rightful country. He expected a reward, maybe even a ceremony. Instead, he got handcuffs. The trial was swift. He was sentenced to 1 year and 15 days in prison. On appeal, it was reduced to 7 months and 9 days. He'd already served most of it awaiting trial. In Italy, public opinion was firmly on his side. Newspapers called him a hero. Crowds cheered outside the courthouse. He'd done what many Italians felt, rightly or wrongly, should have been done. When the painting was briefly displayed in Florence before being returned to France, over 30,000 people lined up to see it. Peruggia served his time, returned to ordinary life, and eventually moved back to France. He died in 1925, at 44, largely forgotten. But the painting he stole was not forgotten. Not even close. Here's the thing nobody talks about. Before August 1911, before Peruggia lifted it off those 4 iron pegs, the Mona Lisa was not a particularly famous painting. It was respected. Art historians appreciated it. It hung in the Salon Carré alongside dozens of other works, and most visitors walked right past it. If you'd asked an average Parisian in 1910 to name the most important painting in the Louvre, they'd more likely have said the Coronation of Napoleon by David or a Correggio. The Mona Lisa was one painting among thousands. The theft changed everything. For 2 years, the painting's face was on every newspaper front page in the Western world. People who had never set foot in a museum knew her name. The mystery, the drama, the empty wall, it turned a Renaissance portrait into a global icon. When the painting was finally returned to the Louvre in January 1914, the lines stretched for blocks. Everyone wanted to see the painting they'd been reading about for over 2 years, and those lines never really stopped. Today, roughly 10 million people a year visit the Mona Lisa. It has its own wall, its own room, its own bulletproof case. It is, by virtually any measure, the most famous painting ever created. And it owes that fame to a Glazier with a trunk and a grudge. There's something unsettling about that. We like to think fame is earned. That the world's most celebrated artwork sits on that pedestal because of its beauty, its mystery, Leonardo's genius. And all of those things are real. But the truth is, the Mona Lisa is the Mona Lisa because a man stole it, because newspapers needed a story, because an empty wall was more interesting than a full one. Fame is an accident. The world's most visited artwork owes its throne to a petty thief who thought he was a patriot. And there's one more thing worth sitting with. The Louvre's security wasn't defeated by technology or force. It was defeated by trust. Peruggia built the case. He wore the smock. He knew the doors. The system trusted him because the system had made him part of itself. Security is only as strong as the trust you place in the people who build it. That was the unlit room. See you in the dark. If you're one of the wide awake, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. And if this one got under your skin, leave a comment. I read them all. If you're listening on Spotify or your podcast app, a 5-star review goes a long way. It helps other people find us in the dark. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Follow for more. This is the Unlit Room. True stories that actually happened. New ones every day.